Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Ariella Shoham. I lead the marketing for the Software and Monetization Business Unit. And joining me today is Dale Hopkinson, who heads our pre-sales consultants. You've joined us for this exclusive customer webinar series. You've probably received invitations to our Ask the Expert series, where we address general thought leadership trends. This is a different type of communication. We've actually created this specifically for our customers. It's a customer-only series, and the reason that we're doing this is because we feel that more and more of our customers are experiencing a transformation in how they're doing business. If it's how they license or how they price or how they go to market, more and more of our customers are in need of different approaches to how they used to do business before. And we thought that if we created this series, we could share some of that experience with a broader audience of our customers. And so this is the first session. For those of you who are not familiar with GoToWebinar, there's a chat window at the bottom right-hand side. The session is being recorded, so we will send the recording to everyone who is registered and attended. And you are all on mute, so the only way to communicate with us is through the chat window. We'll see. I may open this up as well. I can unmute individual people, so I will be moderating while Dale speaks. So just feel free to either ping us with questions, raise your hand. All the little interaction buttons are on this panel on the right-hand side of your window. So no further ado, I'll hand this over to Dale.
Yep, thank you, Ariella. Hi, everyone. Welcome again, as Ariella just mentioned. So in sort of our flow for today's session, as Ariella mentioned, we want to kind of go through, where we see things shifting. We spend time with a lot of companies just looking to maybe deploy a different way, or they're a shift in their business that's causing them to change their monetization strategy, how they license, how they sell. So we want to share that some of that with you. Usually, when we sit with customers and sharing some of our experience, it helps them to uncover new opportunities on where and how they can monetize. We want to talk to, of course, the impact of that transformation. Not always an easy thing, but definitely well worth it. Then just briefly touch upon Gemalto Software and Services, so how we can assist you in the part that's relevant to us. And then some key takeaways. Ariella mentioned this is one of 4-part series that we created with you in mind. You do use the chat. Share with us some questions and any specific feedback, in the upcoming sessions. If you share something that is relevant to help in our planning, we certainly most will address that also. But again, feel free to type in your questions as I go through. And we'll be certain to answer those questions. And if not, definitely follow up with your Gemalto contact, and we can get in contact with you and dive deeper into your unique questions and situations. So kind of wanted to start off with a very common, I'm also way too sensitive, common theme here. We see the former CEO of GE, they essentially looked at their business when he became the CEO, and one of the things they wanted to do was, of course, in this transformation, take part in that to see where they can also drive revenue. As part of, their team looking at things, they evolved their strategy, and they pretty much said, everything is software, right? One of the former CEO's famous quotes. And looking at GE's strategy, by 2020 or 2025, I forget the exact year, GE's strategy is to be one of the top 10 software companies. Looking at the lines of business that they have, and one of the interesting things I was reading about the former CEO, when it came to their jet engine business, he said, are we really providing jet engines? There's a number of sensors on these engines, which there's a lot more software that, than they put work into than just the hardware itself these days. So understanding where the value is coming, and spending time with a lot of companies. I mean, companies like even Michelin, they'll say, they're mobility solutions provider, right, where they're focusing on providing software and services to help their customers maintain the usability of their vehicle. So if these larger companies who are conglomerates and have largely been focused on hardware, sort of understanding the world is shifting to software and beginning to drive revenue there, is definitely one of the key, focuses of a lot of companies in this sort of transformation as they move forward. So of course, just sort of looking at the broad spectrum of change that each company individually goes through in different stages. You may be a company that has provided, at some point in time, a device or a hardware-based offering, or maybe even an offering that was just a one-time purchase, right? So you were limited there. Of course, with the ownership of the product, everything was typically on-premise. The customer owned the product. Usually some kind of one-time sale. Customer maybe did maintenance, etc., and really controlled a lot of the functionality there. At some point in time, there's a value seen where you can drive greater value of what you offer to the customers with software. So maybe the software was used now to control a bit more on the devices. We work with a lot of companies who they're able to consolidate devices and drive the functionality based off of software, opposed to having, a device-specific functionality, right? So of course, with the entrance of software now, you have the ability now to look at how you price and how you go to market with that, right? If you're going to still just have the perpetual sale, or if you're going to also include some kind of packaging where you may charge a premium for different packages, feature enablement, and maybe even subscription-based or different license models, right? But again, the shift of software, again, this change happens within a specific individual company at different speeds, of course, was now services. So looking at how do you augment the software to drive greater recurring revenue, right? Not just being based off the software, but how do you provide services, of course, with the proliferation of cloud technologies or even hosting technologies. The value is no longer just about the software, but about the services you provide for the customer, be it maintenance or some kind of different monetization service, etc., which now allows you to really look at what you do from the data perspective, which is really interesting. We speak to a lot of companies, and as they grow in this sort of global evolution here, data is becoming very interesting. Companies are, of course, legally through their EULA and depending on what vertical they're in, but once able to clear those things to collect relevant amounts of data, it's very interesting what they can do with that data. They can package it and resell it back to the user. They can find some value out of that. Even selling that to different verticals if there's some value to be gained out of that, right? So there's a lot of ways we see companies leveraging data. So being able to collect that from the software and services standpoint to understand, how the customer is interacting with your solution, how often they're using your service, or if they need to use your service, etc. Being able to package that and to drive revenue from that, but also to be efficient with their deployment and delivery, right? You can get usage and data just for the pure BI standpoint to understand how you iterate and how you package and how you deliver the next version. But that ultimately leads into what we see a proliferation of ecosystem, right? You can think of the very, very easy to grasp ideas, the mobile devices, right? You have one mobile maker, but they've opened up some sort of app store where other providers can provide software on their platform, right? So again, how do you open up the platform, or how do you play on someone else's platform in their ecosystem to also drive revenue as well as other value for end users? So again, this is in a broad spectrum of the evolution. We are aware of a lot of our customers are still really between steps 1 and 2, right? Moving from either a device-based or a one-time sale to sort of really, really driving revenue from software and really monetizing their software. A lot of companies we sit with, while they do have software and or the devices, if you're a device-based company, usually the software either comes along for the ride, or companies who sell software in a perpetual manner, they still yet to really extract the most value out of their software, right? How they package it, how they monetize it, etc. Right, so following in line, again, this is not just what we're seeing and what we sort of envision. It really is what the broad market says also. And actually very interesting, the market more and more these days, they don't separate software and services, which you see I don't have a special image for software. Most companies expect software to have a level of services together, right? And really the monetization opportunities fall in these 4 categories, right? So you have to begin to look at your own strategy and see what category you're in now and verify and make sure you're getting the most value out of that category today. and also thinking about changing and shifting strategy and evolving strategies to grow into the other categories. And we'll look at these individually also to see where those opportunities greater lie. But one of the interesting, actually reading this morning on CNBC, the World Economic Forum, they mentioned that over the past few years, companies, they've sort of been forced to reconsider their existing business models, right? And companies that's looking to grow really shouldn't shy away from emerging technologies and changing business models. So it's very prevalent. It's something we all feel. A lot of our customers are just understanding how to do that, right? And we'll talk about that. They run into a lot of different impacts where, again, we've helped them a number of fronts, which we're here to share today. But on the device sort of level, it's very basic, right? You have the basic model. You charge per premium. It's usually a one-time sale, which is one of the most critical things, right? It's very, very transactional. It's very difficult to drive value based on transactional exchanges. That's where you look at things, you get commoditized, right? We know the story of the margins are low on hardware, difficult to compete there, etc. But we see a lot of companies now thinking, how do they drive innovation, whether it's service or software-based innovation or business model innovation, if it's only on this level that they do business, right? Which leads us now into the software and services monetization. Again, Capgemini, they don't, one of the leading analysts we've worked with, they don't separate software from services, right? There's this expectation that the two come together. But on the software and service level, you get to this sort of customer relational aspect, and it really gives you a lot of more ways to monetize, right? You can look at how you package the software, if you want to, how you want to upsell and cross-sell, etc., right? So how you package that, what you offer, even how you offer it. Is it recurring based? Is it subscription based? Are you looking at pay-as-you-go different business models? So again, it's really on this level you can get your first foray into changing the business model. Because again, changing the business model allows you to do a few things. Enter into new markets, compete differently, and really offer your customer value, more value. Right? A lot of times we work with customers who have a great solution, but they offer the entire solution to a customer. And for a customer who only needs a few pieces, it may be overwhelming for them, and it may be also difficult for them to justify purchasing the larger package when they only going to use a subset of that. Right, so we've helped a lot of companies be able to certainly package in such a way that they can only sell what's needed, and should a customer, of course, need to grow, they are always able to upsell and cross-sell as needed. Again, moving past the software and services level, another opportunity here is really, as I mentioned before, on the data monetization, right? So if you have some kind of system where you have sensors, you may be capturing irrelevant data just by chance from the sensor, but you can package that and sell to someone else. Or if you have, specific data you capture from your software, again, you may be able to package that and resell to the end user so they can drive some greater intelligence now, some actionable intelligence, So one of the big things these days is no unplanned downtime, right? So if you have some kind of data that can help that feed into other systems, certainly that's one of the very, very large things, as well as getting the data for your own use, right? If you're using just for your pure BI standpoint, right, to be able to send back to your product management to understand how your own software is being used, your own service is being used, so you can change how you monetize or continue doing what you have been doing. Then ultimately, as I mentioned, in the ecosystem, right, so this is very, very advanced. A lot of companies now really they're beginning to think about how they do that, how they allow others on their platform, how they authenticate a device, how they verify, the trust first of all, then thinking about, of course, the models of that, right? Who pays for that, right? So there's a lot of complexity there, and while this is certainly prevalent, a lot of companies are not there yet, right? But this is definitely the thing on the horizon. If you think about IoT, having multiple devices speak to each other, as well as some service, right, to give more value to the user of that software and service. So really this shift just causes you to rethink the concept of value, right? I mean, again, value before was shipping a device or shipping a perpetual software. A lot of times, you end up with shelfware, right, with just a perpetual software, as we know. Companies, they didn't find that valuable because, again, it may have did what they needed to do, but it also may have did in excess of what they needed, which intimidated them, right? So really, this whole shift of the market today causes you to think about how you create and capture value, right? And to do this, I mean, you have to look at the methods of value, how you value things today, and how you produce and share value to the market, right? How you deploy it, how you sell it, how you package it, how you communicate it, right, to the user. And these are some things we'll sort of look at today in this approach. Again, the mindset shifts, of course, when you go from a product-centric to a service-centric approach, just internally, things change, and we'll take a look at that impact, right? If it's going from moving from innovative technology to now focusing on the customer experience, or looking at your revenue model where it's based off perpetual or transactional to, again, recurring value, right, and the customer benefit. So we'll take a chance and sort of look at the impact of that transformation now. While I know it sounds good, we spend a lot of time with our customers sort of walking through the levels of impact and helping them to really adapt and change their strategy there. And again, if you see something you need to ask a specific question, please feel free. And if it's too in-depth, we can certainly follow up with you and speak more in-depth of your case. First and foremost, this is an organizational impact, right? It touches you changing the business model and how you sell and go to market. It touches every level of the organization, right? From fulfillment, the way things are changed. You're no longer just dropping, if you go from hardware keys, right? If you're no longer just dropping a hardware key in a box, right? Which may be potential revenue recognition things with how you deliver. The systems that your IT team has in place today. Finance, right? I just mentioned how you recognize the revenue. Customer support, right? How do you support? How do you verify someone has a license or the appropriate entitlement to use what they need to use? And of course, product management. How do you package, things differently to show off the value? We work with a lot of companies, a lot of analysts who do pricing and the packaging and the marketing side. One of the big things is you have to make the packaging easy to sell and easy to communicate the value to your users, right? If you're trying to over-communicate to drive the value on the packaging, we've learned, something certainly is not ideal there. You have to relook at packaging. So product management key to this organizational shift. From the customer standpoint, some of the things that causes your customer service team as well as your customers to change is they expect a flexible pricing, right? You have these disruptors that's coming into the space where they're a little more flexible because they can be, right? They don't have legacy systems or legacy strategies to worry or even compete with. So they're able to offer flexible pricing. You can do pay-as-you-go, or you can sign up for a particular tier, or you can only buy the functionality you need. Again, they expect the instant delivery, right? They no longer want to wait for a box to be delivered to them, right? So how do you give that instantaneous access, either in some sort of contingency or grace period if you do have to ship something still, right? How do you give some sort of intermittent period where they can use it before shipment is arrived, or how do you go straight to delivering things electronically? Either way, they expect a smooth customer experience, right? Especially if they have to buy more than one product from you, right? And if you have more than one product using different licensing technology, the user doesn't want to be concerned with that. They know they want to have the single experience every single time. And as the user, they expect to get some kind of insight into not just your software, but how they use it and how they maximize it, right? We've been in a lot of conversations with companies where they may have sold perpetual, and they may not have any kind of way to track what's being used. And they may have done an audit, or they may have come around and understood that one of their customers are actually overusing, and it becomes now how do we get them to a new tier, right? Our end users, how do we get them into the appropriate level of contract they should be in? It's a difficult conversation for the CFOs, right, to understand and to prove what they're being used. So that your customers expect at the core these things for to have a really good experience of your using your software and service. Then, of course, the technology is impacted, right? I mean, again, everything is driven from software these days, right? So even if you have just only a device or perpetual software you deliver, if you're the enterprise software side, it's expected that you have some kind of usability where you can get data and you can connect to some cloud service. If even if the entire software is not a cloud, some components it's okay to be a cloud, whether it's a management or a monitoring level, right? Because you have the admins of your customers now. They want to be able to manage and monitor the software is used regardless of where they are, right? They want to be able to use different devices. They want to be able to access that data. And even if they need to, think about if you have, particular software, having those software communicate to each other or communicate to a single license server, right? Whereas you don't need to have a license on each individual node or each individual device or piece of software, but they can speak to a single repository and they can get their license from the customer. So definitely the way technology is in software is creating some impacts and some opportunities there. Solely on the actual enforcement side, we work with a lot of companies who they have legacy enforcement technologies. If it's some kind of hardware key or dongle, as maybe terminology you're accustomed with, or some homegrown software license or something they created. These are the core things that they have, on the enforcement challenge, where they look to scale what they have today, and it's really difficult. They come to a point where it's either build something new or buy something, right, that can solve these challenges. But first and foremost is, of course, the license models. You want a technology that can support evaluations, extending evaluations. You can do subscriptions, pay-per-use, right? You want to be able to do multiple license models to tie to the business model and not just a one-time sale of perpetual any longer. You need something that's high availability, right? Again, customers who have, a USB dongle, if that breaks, your software is potentially not usable if it's tied to that. Or if you have a homegrown license, a software license, an OS update may damage that license, right? So again, customers, one of the challenges, they need this stuff to work all the time, right? Again, the quality of services I mentioned before, if you still have to ship something, or if there's some kind of network loss, right? Customers expect, the quality of service where it should work temporarily throughout those situations. And then one of the biggest things we've seen just with legacy enforcement technologies is dealing with cloud and virtual machines, right? Customers expect a seamless and transparent experience when they're running in VM environments. It's of course difficult to do that with hardware keys, and as VMware is probably one of the only providers that supports USB pass-through, meaning the key can work in a VM, but if you have customers who deploy on virtual servers, it's difficult, right? There's no USBs any longer around, so even the homegrown license, software license, or legacy software license, it's difficult to be able to track each individual virtual environment, right? So having customers work in a virtual environment, if they spin up another environment, sometimes that breaks the license, but it's the same customer, right? So we've seen a lot of challenges around virtual machines and legacy enforcement. These are the core things when you look at the enforcement challenges, and my terminology may be a bit different. When I say enforcement, I'm really speaking about those components you place inside your applications to do their actual license checks, right? So you may call it something different, protection or licensing, but all the same thing, right? Those things that goes inside your application. Those are the core challenges there, right? And we look at from the business side, we see a lot of companies, right? They may have a diverse customer base, right? So one company you sell direct, another is government, another you sell through partners. So you have a diverse customer base, but you need to support those customers in a clean experience. Again, you may have multiple product variants, whether it's legacy or you grew through mergers and acquisitions, right? And having all different legal and compliance regulations. We know the business landscape is changing as you grow, right? You encounter different things. And all of that, they really lead into a lot of operational challenges, right? The operational impact. Again, having systems and processes that haven't scaled, you you first and foremost, you have dissatisfied customers, right, with delivery and inconsistent user experience with those things we spoke about. You may have, right, a new piece of software that you can sell in a recurring type of subscription module where you cannot change anything else, but they expect everything to be that way, right? If you're still shipping hardware, right, again, there's a time to receive that, and of course the problems that can happen with that. And then from the own internal standpoint, there's the revenue recognition, right? Again, from your standpoint, with software, of course, and as you begin to transform and shift to these models, there are differences, of course, how you recognize revenue, but they're usually much faster. Then again, with not having the ability to have usage data on any level, if it's internally, knowing what you've shipped and how you've shipped and how many, what quantity, how many are being used, etc. From the customer standpoint, you can do one of two things. You get the inadvertent license abuses I just mentioned, right? We work with a lot of companies who they uncover that and they try to help their companies be honest. It's always a difficult task. Of course, again, not having the usage, you potentially miss revenue streams, right? And of course, lower renewal rates. So those are some of the core operational challenges when we sit with our customers. And then from the system standpoint, of course, is the integration and automation. And those are the key challenges, again, from both the licensed technology as well as the operational side. So as far as companies who have successfully shifted, we've looked over a ton of data and a ton of sort of meetings and notes that we've done. And while there's more, these are some of the core things that's initially solved or usually looked in phase one and phase 1/2, right? From the back end, the entitlement side, of course, the new business and license models, right? Everyone wants who's in this transformation, who's selling software different or deploying software differently, needs and or wants new license models. For example, if you're selling a SaaS-based solution, something that never touches the customer's premise, you cannot sell that perpetual, right? Because there's no ownership of that. So you have to look at, just by that deployment alone, you have to look at new models. And of course, you look at new models for, different reasons, right, as far as business growth and different strategies. Which, of course, the models, they lead to packaging, right? Again, if you want to have different models and you want to provide different value to your customer, you'll have to package differently, right? No, you'll have to look at even just beyond the bronze, gold, platinum editions, right? Or those packages. You may have to look at having add-ons, right? Maybe those things are valuable enough where someone will actually pay just for that one particular functionality. Right, so being able to be packaged in a flexible manner, and by flexible meaning you can package differently without changing anything in your source code, right? So you can make those business decisions without calling the engineering team to change something. Then, of course, at some time, phase one and or early phase two is system integration. So the system that does the packaging and does the entitlements, looking to automate that, right? Being able to create an entitlement or to create the license automatically from a sales order and not having your internal operations team to go to another solution to manually do that, where they can potentially make mistakes and enter, make a wrong keystroke and enter the wrong package that someone purchased, which of course would disrupt the user experience. And of course, evaluations, right? We see as we shift, not knowing what that adoption may be or how your customers may react, giving them an easy way to try it out, right? But trying it out with the advent of you can get the usage back and you can actually see what's going on. And of course, extending that and giving an easy use, extending evaluations and converting evaluations from paid versions, of course, sort of sub points from those, right? But from the pure entitlement side, those are usually the core things. Again, there are many more, and you may have some different ones, but these are usually the core things from over hundreds of meetings that we've sat in and looked at some notes. On the enforcement side, again, the actual license technology that goes into your application. Some of the core things, again, are feature-based, right? Being able to break things down by feature allows us to do that flexible packaging, allows us to do to license differently, right? You may have one functionality that you license differently than others. You certainly can do that. Having, again, a licensed server, so if you sell into a larger enterprise, or a larger company of yours, where they buy X amount of systems, you don't want a user experience where they have to get a license key for each individual system, right? You can give them a local repository where that local repository can facilitate the licenses to those different endpoints. Usage tracking, again, for a number of reasons. Those are some of the big things these days, whether it's changing the business model to do pay-per-use or pay-as-you-go, or again, just from the telemetry data, right? You can get some data back from your customers to know what version they're on, where they're installing, et cetera, et cetera. Then sort of rehost and revoke. They may mean the same thing to you or different, but in essence, allowing your end customer to move the license from one machine to another. Those are some of, it's again self-service, right? So that was probably one of that and initial activation were one of the top two customer sort of the high touch points with customers, right, where licensing becomes a burden. So by shifting that and allowing your customers to do a lot of self-service, again, these are the top things on both sides, the entitlement and the enforcement. Now we see our customers, they essentially need, when they're looking at changing their business model as it pertains to an entitlement solution. So just quickly want to talk about some Gemalto software and services. So from our Sentinel back office, the entitlement management, again, we do that, right? So the ERP, CRM integration, whether it's integrating to one of the SAP, the Salesforce, the Oracle, the NetSuite, etc., or even some kind of custom ERP we've done, or CRM, we've done that, right? As long as it can speak to a web service, we can integrate just about anything. One of the nice things, and I'm just giving this, sort of a premise. I have kind of a larger slide that shows a large ecosystem, so you can get some kind of reference to just our software. Um, Again, license key generation, right? So our back office is agnostic. So we know a lot of companies as they grow, they may have existing technology. We have some companies that still need to support a hardware dongle, right? While they want to adopt new software licensing, that's fine. Right? You can manage that from a single entitlement solution, right? So operationally, you can automate just your procedures. You can have the same operational experience of how you deploy any software, any SKU, as well as for your end customer. You can give them the same experience, right? Um, so again, we can support the electronic downloads. So if you're shifting from supporting or shipping boxes, right, we can support ESD, right? So giving your customers, again, the ability to download, what they've purchased for that instantaneous access. These are just some of the core things. Much more functionalities there, but just to give you a sort of a broad view of our software. And again, we can talk more in depth of, what systems and solutions can do for you if we need to. Then more specifically from the enforcement side, again, those pieces that goes into your application. Here's where you get the feature-based controls, right? The ability to change license models, the server, license server, etc., right? And this from the enforcement side, again, being able to transition and transform to those different models that I mentioned before. Almost usually it's a software license, right, where you need to have some software license that's strong yet flexible to allow your end customer to deploy in a cloud or on-premise, in a VM, right? Move from one device to another or one environment to another, or you want to do some kind of site licensing, something like that, etc. And that's where the enforcement comes in, right? So from the technology side, we've just seen that as you grow, I mean, the systems in place today, they may not scale, right? So again, we have solutions, that can do that, and then you can follow up more in depth with your Gemalto contact to really dig in deeper around that. So I just show that for the premise to show, so when I show this slide, it makes a little more sense. But overall, our software and services, again, we have a suite that's integrated, automated, flexible, and secure, where we focus not just on the enforcement part, right, the pieces that goes into your application, but there's a large focus around all the back office functionality, right, which you certainly see the entitlement system doing here. Whether that's integrating to those web portals to give your customer and or channels, if you sell through channels, and you want to give your channel some autonomy to manage licenses and entitlements, certainly can do that in a self-service manner, right? So being able to tie into portals, integrate to back office systems, I mentioned ERP, CRM, business intelligence, billing, right? As you look to shift and transform your model, we have a number of companies where the application speaks into the back-end Sentinel EMS and collects some data and feeds a billing system, right, to kicks off an invoice. Or even the other way, your customer purchases something, that purchase online speaks to the billing or subscription management system. Once that purchase is successful, that system comes now to the Sentinel EMS to provision what the user needs, right? So we can dig in deeper with you on an individual basis, talk more about integration. But from an ecosystem standpoint, again, remember the earlier slide I showed, right? Hardware, software, ecosystem, etc. Right? We as well, we're doing that also, right? So we have full view in mind. We're going to be part of an ecosystem to allow you to gain more value of how you deliver things, right? So making our system part of a subsystem, it just helps you, right? Again, tying into when you look at key generators, right? So the actual licensed technology that gets down into your application, if it's a Gemalto technology, great. If it's not, great, right? We part of the ecosystem, and we know you may have legacy stuff, be it legacy Gemalto hardware, right, or legacy homegrown software that you just need to support still. You may not deploy anything new with that, but you need to maintain the legacy stuff, right? So that's fine. we can certainly integrate with that. And all that to really support where you need to deploy your solution, right? If it's pure software applications, on-premise server, in an intelligent device, something in a real-time operating system that has restricted footprint, mobile devices, cloud, right? We certainly do that, right? So that's the whole point of our system being delivered, the way it is and created the way it is, again, to allow you to transform and to deliver different value in different places to your end customer. Right. So again, in a nutshell, it's the same slide we looked at earlier, right? Again, looking at as Capgemini points out, the four main models and opportunities to monetize, right? If it's the device or software and service level, the data level, and ecosystem. Again, from our software standpoint, we certainly help you there. I'll talk a little bit from the strategy standpoint, how we can help you from the strategy standpoint to understand what's available to you and how you can certainly grow that way, if that's what you'd like to, right? So sort of our approach from our services side, right? So again, offering software and services to help our customers transform. So our services, by the way, are fully optional. Just sharing what we have. We do see a lot of customers, they at least look at some consulting services. And this is just the piece I just mentioned, right? That strategy piece. So working with you and helping you understand sort of where you are in the monetization opportunity right now, right? If it's a device or transactional software and service data and or ecosystem. Really, looking to see if you're maximizing there yet, and then learning from you what it is you want to do, and giving you a plan, a technology agnostic plan to get there, right? From that, again, if you need any kind of deeper technical help, design, architecture, we can do that if you want us to. We can do as much heavy lifting as you want us to, right? At the end of the day, we have our service team really we care about successful projects, right? So we can work with you. You can have bits and pieces of whatever we offer to really, again, help you, right? The main point is to really help you transform and do new things as you need to with the business. So that's at a quick glance, some of the customers. So in this exact presentation, I'm speaking about some of these customers' use case played right into the content, right, or even help construct this content. A broad mix, you'll see large and small customers. Some customers, they went from hardware to software. Some customers went from device monetization to software monetization. Some even still do hardware while they have adopted new software, right? So you can see SD Project at the bottom, right? They do dual software and hardware licensing still. Hardware for some of their new stuff also, right? So that's just what they need to do. So it's certainly fine, right? We have a lot of understanding of the different strategies. If you're looking to do cloud-based licensing, or if you need to look more at protection, but you want a software licensing, or you want to move more on the compliance side. Again, we've been there, done that, right? But the one thing I really like, especially when I go to companies and really help them through that, we simply leverage our experience in helping you specifically. I better grab some power. But we leverage our experience to help you specifically, right? We don't try to just simply can you into something we've done before, right? We take our time and really understand your limitations, your impact, your aspirations, and we work that into a strategy for you, right? So hopefully in a quick nutshell, just looking at some of these companies, you can get a grasp at the breadth and the scope of who and what we've helped to accomplish, right? By and large, all these companies, they have one thing in common, whether I highlighted or not. It was largely driven around their user experience, right? So even though they changed their model or they changed their technology, the user experience was really key and germane into their new development or their new deployment, right? So in a quick summary, again, from this 1 or 4-part series, where really just about embracing the shift, right? So most of those other companies, when we went into them, it seemed like such an arduous process, right? But getting in and getting organized and getting focused to the strategy and committing to it, we work through with them. But in summary, I mean, the concept of value is changing, right? Not only does this kind of cause you to, of course, if you want to compete, to shift, but it really opens up new avenues for monetization of your software and services, as we saw in the slide with the four, device, software services, data monetization, etc. It really gives you much more opportunity to drive value, to capture value, right? You just have to be open to doing it. As I just mentioned, regardless of what you do, you have to do it with the user experience in mind, right? How you package, how you deploy, how you entitle and license. All of that has to be frictionless to the customer, right? From the packaging standpoint, really what I mean by that is if customer purchases package A and they want package B, that should be as seamless as possible, right? They should not have to uninstall and reinstall, right? I mean, long years ago, if they were device-based, you would have to ship a new physical device, right? Now everyone expects software to turn on something or to do something differently with just the software. And not just that, but they expect it instantaneous and they expect it in a seamless way, right? So that has to be key to what you do next, right? Thinking of the customer in mind. And again, scalable systems is a must, right? Even just your ERP, CRM, your system must be able to handle recurring models, right? As well as, of course, your entitlement and licensing technology. It has to be able to meet and do those flexible models, not just the ones you're thinking about now, but later on when you're looking at cloud-based, and you may want to license by the hour, right, or do something unique or off the wall, it may seem now, but you have to be able to scale, and not just scale, but to do it in a way that's seamless to you also, right? You want to be able to change your license model without having to call engineering team, right? No, long gone are the days where you're hard coding licenses, right? Fast deployment, of course, you want to get it out to the customers, and you don't want to manage different builds, right? So just in a quick nutshell, core summaries of today. Again, as we work through the sessions, we'll get a bit more in depth. So the next session, the dates escape me now, but we'll focus it more on sort of looking at the business model change, right? So what it takes to exactly change the business model, and again, sharing what some companies have done, as well as our experience around that. That's all the content for today. So at this time, if we have any specific questions that we can field at this time, if you have any questions you've been holding off on them, please do type them in at this time, and we can certainly answer your questions.
Thank you, Dale. We've actually on the 45-minute mark, and I think we're good. I want to thank you for taking the time with us today. And as Dale concluded, this is the first of a four-part series, and already in the summary slides, Dale already mentioned business models and changing business models. So our next session will dive deeper into exactly that. Again, we'll give you sort of tangible examples of how we've helped, again, customers like you do these various changes in their business models to adapt to this transformation. So I thank you, Dale, for your time today. I thank everyone for joining us, and we look forward to you joining us on our next session. Bye, and have a good day.
Bye, everyone. Speak soon.